Hello, and welcome to today's presentation about how a strong security culture protects your business from cyber threats. Let's get started. Show of hands. How many of you have ever sat through a scary cybersecurity presentation before? Don't be shy. Okay, there are a few. I would bet good money the presenter did their very best to freak you out, frightening you into taking your cybersecurity seriously, right? Well, that is not the point of today's talk. Unlike every other one you've probably heard on the subject, I'm going to flip the script. Rather than scare you, I'm going to empower you and your team. The number one thing you can expect to take away from today is how to build a proactive security culture by starting with a scary story. That does not have to be your future. But wait, you may be thinking, didn't Brian just say he wouldn't freak me out? Well, I did. You see, even though I'm going to start with a nightmare scenario first, I'll use it as a springboard to show you and your team how to avoid such danger. And if you follow what I teach you today, if you create a proactive security culture, you can avoid the fate of alpha mortgage, which we'll talk about in a minute. Even better, you'll protect your organization long term from the worst kinds of cybersecurity risks. So, what happened to alpha mortgage, you may ask? Spoiler alert, it ain't pretty. A man we'll call Tom launched Alpha Mortgage. Tom was a business owner who liked to move fast and break things. Forever chasing the next shiny object, he didn't think it was important to focus on what ifs, like cyber attacks. Naturally, he didn't spend a lot of time training his people on cybersecurity. They had nothing close to a security culture. It was 100% absent. It's little wonder his office manager, Sarah, fell for a classic phishing scheme, one that took down his whole business. On this day, Sarah got an email from someone she thought was Alpha's bank, alerting her of suspicious activity on the company account. A good employee, Sarah takes the email seriously. After all, the layout and the logo matches official communications she received from the bank before. Let's pause here. To start, the real problem is Tom never bothered to create a proactive security culture. If he had, Sarah might have noticed things didn't add up in this bank email. For one, instead of using Tom's name or even Sarah's, the email is addressed to Dear Valued Customer. Next, it asks Sarah to verify sensitive account details, going against bank security advice. But the biggest red flag of all, the quote bank email address didn't even match the bank's domain name, like bankofamerica.com, for example. Again, since Sarah never received any security awareness training, she falls for the scam. And oh boy, did the nightmare start for the small company. Like other criminal hackers, the bad guys use a three-step process to bring Alpha Mortgage to its knees. If you think about the phishing email Sarah got as the bad guy's ransom foothold, and a foothold, by the way, is like someone getting into your systems, then step one, stealing your data, is the hacker's insurance policy. All day, every day, these cyber crooks crawl around vulnerable networks, stealing social security numbers, bank accounts, dates of birth, documents, intellectual property, client data, and so on. Put another way, now that they just got the motherload of Alpha's most prized data, they have a bargaining chip, something that gives them real leverage. Building on that leverage, the bad guys act fast. Knowing companies like Tom's need data to survive and operate, just like you and I require oxygen, the hackers encrypt their data, which means they lock it up with a special key only they have, and then they destroy and disable all their file and data backups so Alpha can't use them later. Lastly, now the bad guys blackmail Alpha, and to Sarah's horror and Tom's too, they both get an email that makes things crystal clear who's now in charge. It reads, pay us $50,000 within 24 hours, and if you don't pay, We will release all your client sensitive data and your own on the dark web for all to see. Now, for those of you who don't know what the dark web is, it's like an underground marketplace where stolen data can be offered for trade or sale. Think of it like a digital Silk Road. In other words, the bad guys just put a ransom out on Alpha's data. No one at Alpha Mortgage can retrieve their now encrypted data without possessing the special digital key that only cyber criminals hold. They want to sell Tom that special key for 50K. And if he doesn't buy it, the key will be withheld and the data will get dumped on the dark web, destroying all trust in Tom's mortgage business. It can even lead to devastating lawsuits, but more on that in a moment. For now, you may be saying to yourself, but wait, Tom's okay. He probably has his own data backups. Nope. See step two. All backups were already deleted and disabled. Now, it's time to drill down a bit deeper. At this point, Alpha Mortgage faced a perfect storm of multiple problems. Let's cover them. One, they're unable to serve their clients. Two, they're in for prolonged downtime. Three, both items lead to loss of client confidence and loss of revenue. Four, meanwhile, Tom cannot work and he can't make payroll. Five, this causes his staff to lose confidence in him and the company, Alpha Mortgage. Six, the longer this continues, the greater the chances his people will leave. And seven, there is legal liability involved via potential lawsuits over theft of sensitive and proprietary data that should have been protected in the first place. So let's take a moment to zero in on the final danger. It's quite possible Alpha may be deemed to be in violation of the breach notification agreement. Now, here's what that means. Alpha is legally required to notify state and federal regulators as well as anyone whose data was stolen. Further, in the case of a data breach, which is a legal term for data theft, by the way, regulators may go after Alpha for not properly safeguarding sensitive data in the first place. Alpha can even be fined or charged by the federal or state governments for their lapse. Side note, this is why the bad guys like to go after regulated industries. Again, it gives them even more leverage. Okay, now you might be thinking, that's really bad news. But surely Alpha could go to its IT company to fix the problem. No dice. Tom's IT company flat out tells him there is nothing they can do. Fine. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Tom must have an insurance policy to pay off the ransom. Won't that work? Nope. The insurance company does not have to pay anything due to what's called failure to maintain their systems properly. In short, Alpha is deemed negligent for not safeguarding its client's sensitive data, and their insurance claim is denied, and no payout is made to clean up this mess. Eventually, Tom, the owner, tells Sarah this is bad, really bad, but we'll just pay the 50K and be done with this nightmare. That way, we won't have to say a word to the insurance company or to our customers. We will just eat the loss. So Tom does just that. He sends $50,000 to the bad guys via the Bitcoin digital currency. It hurts a lot. But when it's done, Tom breathes a sigh of relief, grateful his nightmare is over. But is it? No, because 10 minutes after Tom pays up, he gets another email from the bad guys. This time, they're demanding $297,453. You see, there's a reason for that very specific number. It happens to be the exact amount in Alpha's bank. The criminals know this because they have total visibility into all of Alpha's financials, including their business bank accounts. Tom wrongly thought that just because the bad guys struck once, they wouldn't strike again, hoping that there was, quote, honor among thieves. Think about this. If you were a bunch of nefarious cyber criminals who didn't care at all about what happens to you or your people, why wouldn't you go back to the money well for more? So I made a promise at the start of this talk that this wouldn't be another doom and gloom presentation, and I intend to keep it. The first step towards cybersecurity empowerment is assuming responsibility, something Tom did not do. Now, first, it's time to dispel a big myth that cybersecurity insurance will always protect your business. Does anyone remember why the insurance company or carrier would not cover Alpha's loss? Anyone? There are three words we talked about. That's right. Failure to maintain. That is the clause in his cyber policy that states Tom's company would not be covered. You'll recall that he failed to implement and manage the systems and security practices that he claimed were being maintained in his insurance application. And to make matters worse, these security deficiencies are exactly how the hackers got in. It's also possible that Tom might not have had any insurance at all, or not enough of a policy limit to cover Alpha's losses. Either way, this is another reason why you must embrace risk management first. By identifying and assuming risk responsibility, you can be proactive, not reactive, in creating and maintaining a security culture. Side note, there's a mistaken belief amongst small business owners, just like Tom, that they won't get hacked. They think they're too small or that they have nothing of value to cyber criminals. This is dead wrong. Not only is this flawed and wishful thinking, but it's also a very dangerous mentality. Like it or not, we tend to give big companies a pass when they get hacked. It's just another headline we read and then forget about. So, this reminds me of a saying in our industry: you're not too small to get hacked, you're just too small to make the news. So, think about that. The sad reality is that business owners often take the ostrich approach when it comes to risk management. Head in the sand. If I don't acknowledge it, it won't happen to me. But when it's a smaller company like Alpha Mortgage or a doctor with whom we have a direct relationship, that trust can be severed or destroyed in an instant during a cyber attack. Also, smaller companies don't have the financial resources to manage such breaches the same way that a big company does when it happens to them. Insight number two, you cannot rely on your IT department. Contrary to conventional thinking, outsourced IT companies usually have no clue how vulnerable their clients are until it's too late and the cyber attack has already occurred. Remember, Tom took a hands-off approach, believing his IT vendor would protect him. This mindset is commonplace and dangerous. Let's uncover why. Because hands-off business owners like Tom don't have an ownership mentality, their sizable risk is rarely or insufficiently assessed. The right questions, the ones that could make or break a business like Alpha, sadly, those questions are rarely, if ever, posed to the business owner, allowing them to create a proactive security culture. Worse yet, many IT teams, whether they're internal to your company or outsourced, are simply not educated or knowledgeable enough to understand the organizational risk they hold on behalf of their clients. This leads to our third insight. You can turn things around with the right partner. Trading fear for empowerment, you can create a security culture. To show you how, I have another story. Spoiler alert, this one does have a happy ending. I once worked with the financial services firms I'll call Optimal Investments. Nicole, the founder, differed greatly from Tom. Unlike him, she knew what was at stake and did take an ownership responsibility to risk. As a firm dealing in sensitive client data, Nicole couldn't afford to be found non-compliant with regulators like FINRA or the SEC. The first thing we did when working with Nicole was to perform a risk assessment. Our cybersecurity risk assessment output ranges from 0 to 100. 0 means you have no protections at all. And anything under 50 is terrible with lots of risk, with 100 being a, quote, perfect score. What you should know is that Nicole's firm wasn't always so great. In fact, her firm initially earned one of the worst security scores we had ever seen, 40. They had a huge gap in the following areas: technical, administrative, physical security, unmanaged risk, lack of documented policies and procedures, and so on. To illustrate why they're so bad at first, company-wide, Optimal Investments repeatedly use the same passwords across their systems. They had no multi-factor authentication and no software patching, to name just a few major problems. When my team and I came back to show Nicole and her people ways in which they might be compromised by cybercriminals, it was a huge wake-up call. She said, "But I thought we were okay because all our data is backed up to the cloud." I explained to her that was not nearly enough to truly protect her organization. Fortunately for Nicole, she listened. Continuing with our story, Optimal turned things around the moment Nicole, who is the practice owner, now understood that it's not a matter of if you'll get hacked, but rather when. So she accepted cybersecurity as risk management. Next, she threw herself into educating, training, and empowering her team as a pivotal line of defense. Put simply, Optimal Investments went from victimhood to agency, a major positive shift in mindset. Now, let's take a minute to go through the steps it took to turn Nicole's security culture around. Once Nicole accepted the ownership of a risk, she wanted to ensure that her team understood the relevant cybersecurity risks so they can also be a part of the solution. It all started with a company-wide meeting where Nicole stood up and said, "We need full team buy-in here. There cannot be a weakest link. Otherwise, we are all vulnerable. Everyone has to do their part, and it starts with me, the owner, empowering all of you and giving you the knowledge and weaponry to fight back. Simply put, we cannot let the bad guys win. There's just too much at stake. So, who's with me?" You could see the realization dawn on the faces of her people. Her staff correctly realized that if they didn't all row in the same direction together, they could all sink in the storm. Ed, her office manager, said it best. Any breach could affect our clients, our livelihoods, our families, our homes, and so much more. Instantly, positive peer pressure took off. Called covering your six in the military and law enforcement, the idea was that they all had a shared responsibility to one another. If any one of Optimal Investments was vulnerable to a cyber attack, they were all vulnerable. This realization cascaded throughout the organization, informing their future actions and decisions. At one point, an employee named Mason asked, "Can't our IT company help us? Surely we don't have to do all of this on our own, do we?" Nicole fielded that question, remembering what she learned in our assessment. In our assessment meeting, she told Mason, "Security is not just an IT thing. We need our cybersecurity firm to help with proper risk assessment and risk management. It's critical we have help, their help, alongside our IT vendor and our cyber insurance carrier." With her firm's vulnerabilities and weaknesses identified, Nicole came back to us to establish a company-wide plan that our entire team could follow. Next, we synced up with their insurance broker to ensure Nicole's firm had the right insurance coverage. Why? Because no safety measure is 100% foolproof. Thankfully, cyber insurance can cover what's called residual risk. That means the risk that can't be easily managed. You can think of this partnership as a three-legged stool: Optimal Investments, Optimal Cybersecurity Partner, and Optimal's insurance carrier. Also, unlike Tom's mortgage company, Nicole worked closely with her broker on her insurance application to ensure her carrier would pay should an incident occur. This is the opposite of failure to maintain. Now all three partners were unified in accepting and mitigating risk. Better together. Moving forward, Nicole built a proactive security culture by implementing three critical safeguards. And you can do the very same thing once you establish your risk ownership mentality, as well as empowering your team. Okay, so another quick show of hands. How many of you use one password for everything? Okay, maybe don't tell us that. Here's the problem. When big databases get hacked and passwords are stolen, now the bad guys have repeated passwords to use. Because password reuse is so rampant, this is a great place to start. Optimal Investments adopted a password manager across the company. This allows them to create and store unique passwords for every site using a password manager software system. This, in turn, is protected by a master password that's both strong and unique, and most importantly, not used anywhere else online. Even unique passwords are not enough. Nicole realized Optimal needed a second security layer, multi-factor authentication, also called MFA. Let's go over its parts. Factor one is something you know. Again, that's like a unique password you're creating. Factor two is something you have, like a phone for text messaging or an authenticator app. Google Authenticator or Authy or Microsoft Authenticator are all examples of this. Factor three is something you either are or that belongs to you. It can involve your voice, your face, retina, or fingerprinting. Implement this critical security layer in addition to using a password manager wherever possible. MFA is a critical add-on to your security posture. So it should come as no surprise that the bad guys will try to break your weakest link, your people. If you remember in our first example at the beginning, this is how they got to Alpha's office manager. Knowing this, Nicole gamified her team's ongoing training. Rather than insist on some annual, one and done, cover your butt seminar that would be of help to no one, she made continuous training and testing a fixture of her security culture. At the end of each cybersecurity session, she even hosted quiz sessions, much like how some pubs host trivia night, with winners lauded with fun prizes. Think about the TV show The Office with their Dundee Awards, but with real prizes her teammates actually wanted to win. To continue the gamification, Optimal implemented a kind of secret shopper challenge whereby fake threats were sent to her team intermittently to keep them on their toes. Just like how members of military attack squads don't want to be the weakest link or jeopardizing the mission, each team member rose to the challenge, getting one step ahead of the bad guys. Side note, again, just like in the military, team members never knew which was a test or what was a real threat, so they always needed to stay sharp. Okay, so stepping back from all you've heard today, it's time to return to my initial promise of this talk, exchanging fear for agency. The famous science fiction author H.P. Lovecraft once said, "The oldest and strongest emotion of humankind is fear, and the oldest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." Let's face it, fear can be paralyzing. In the face of threats to our own security or those for whom we care, we can shut down, unable to think and act like we normally would. As the saying goes, in stressful situations, people show what they're truly made of. The bad guys out there, the cyber criminals who took down Alpha Mortgage, they know this. They prey upon our primal instincts of fear, terrifying us to get what they want, to steal our money, our business, and ultimately our dignity. We just can't let that happen. Just imagining that we got the awful news our company was breached and that all of our precious data is being ransomed is enough to get our hearts racing, our palms sweating, feeling like we can't breathe. But there is a way out of this nightmare scenario. It's through empowerment. Rather than allow ourselves to be sitting ducks for the cyber criminals of the world, we can take a proactive approach. Similar to the mother taking defense classes to be ready, should the unthinkable happen, we can prepare ourselves, first mentally with an ownership mindset, then practically through the steps I outlined today. Ultimately, the cyber criminals of the world are cowards. Just like the bully who picks on kids who won't fight back because they're so scared, cyber criminals prey on the fearful and the unprepared. Sadly, low-hanging fruit is the easiest to pick. They don't want you to know what we learned today. The very last thing they need are empowered business owners with a proactive security culture. Put another way, when you move away from fear toward agency, you stop being a target. In short, you stop being a victim and take action. Everything I told you today is to help you make that critical switch. By flipping the script on the bad guys, you gain the advantage. You are in control of your destiny. Gaining such peace of mind, you can return to what you do best, running your business, free of fear, and fully empowered for greatness. Here's to your future success. I thank you very much for listening today, and I hope you found this talk to be helpful. Please feel free to reach out if there's any way I can help or we can be of assistance to you. Thank you.